First one is applied force. A force that is applied to an object by a person or another object, that is a applied force. If a person is pushing a desk across the room, then there is an applied force acting upon the object. The applied force is the force exerted on the desk by the person. So this person is applying force on a desk, so we can say this is the example of applied force. Okay, so in this force, a force that is applied to an object by a person or another object, that is the case of applied force. Okay, so next, normal force. Normal force is the support force exerted on a body that is the contact with the another stable body. Okay, normal force is the support force exerted by a body that is in contact with the other object. Okay, if a body simply kept on the table or anywhere, so a force exerted by the body normally on that body, that is the case of normal force. Okay, the normal force is the support force exerted upon an object that is in contact with another stable object. Here a body kept on this triangle, a force exerted on this body, that is the normal force. If a person leans against the wall pushes horizontally the person, that is the also an example of normal force. Okay, next, friction force. The friction force is the force exerted by a surface as an object moves across it or makes an effort to move across it. The friction force is the force exerted by a surface as an object moves across it or makes an effort to move across it. Okay, there are at least two types of friction: sliding and static friction. Here we can see a body tries to move in this direction, so and friction acting in this direction. So we can say friction always acts against the force of the body. When we are applying the force in this direction, then friction will be act in this direction. We can see in this figure. Okay, the force that opposes the relative motion of two bodies is called friction. It slows down things by acting in the direction opposite to the motion of the body. So friction will always act opposite to the motion of the body. Okay, air resistance force. Air resistance force means like when body is moving in air, so the force act on the body, that are the air resistance force. The air resistance is a special type of friction force that acts upon object as the travel through the air. The force of air resistance is often observed to oppose the motion of an object. Okay, the force will frequently be neglected due to its negligible magnitude. These forces may neglected due to its negligible magnitude. So these are the different force which can be reduced due to the shape and size and the different techniques used in this plane. So the forces will reduce. So it is only for your understanding. Maybe it will be not in your syllabus, but try to understand about the air resistance force. Okay, the air resistance force is a special type of friction force that acts upon object as they travel through the air. Tension force. Next is tension force. The tension force is the force that is transmitted through a string, rope or cable or wire when it is pulled tightly by force acting from the opposite side. the tension force is the force that is transmitted through a string, rope, cable or wire when it is pulled tightly by force acting from opposite sides. So here there is one rope and two persons are pulling this from both the sides. Okay, so here a force produces, that is tension. If in a string or wire or rope the peoples are pulling that rope or wire, the force will produce, that is tension. The tension force is the directed along the length of the wire and pulls equally on the object on the opposite ends of the wire. The tension force is the directed along the length of the wire and pulls equally on the object on the opposite end of the wire. Okay, so always we can see in the example of tug of war, we can see the example of tension force. Okay, spring force. Spring force. The spring force is the force exerted by a compressed or stretched spring upon an object that is attached to it. We can see the example of spring force. An object that compresses or stretches a spring is always acted upon by a force that restores the object to its rest or equilibrium position. Okay, so this is the example of spring force. Muscular force. The force exerted by the muscles of a body is called muscular force. We exert muscular force while walking, running, lifting, etc. Animals exert muscular force to do work like carrying a load, plowing a field, etc. Some examples are lifting a bag, kicking a football, opening a door, pushing a chair, horses pulling a cart. These are the examples of muscular force. Okay, so we can say the force exerted by the muscles of a body is called the muscular force. Okay, and some examples of muscular force are lifting a bag, kicking a football, opening a door, pushing a chair. These all are the examples of muscular force, and muscular force is also example of contact force. Next, collision force. The contact force which comes into play when two bodies collides with each other is called collision force. For example, when two cars collides, they exert force on each other. This force is collision force. Okay. Next, mechanical force. The force produced by a machine is called mechanical force. Actually, a machine does not exert force by itself. It works only with the help of energy supplied by an external source like electricity, petrol, diesel, etc. For example, the engine of a vehicle runs with the help of fuel and moves the vehicle. The wind exerts the force to move a sailboat or a windmill. That also the example of mechanical force. So we can say the force produced by a machine is called mechanical force. Okay, so mechanical force is also an example of contact force. So this is all about contact force. Non-contact forces. The forces which do not require physical contact between two interacting bodies and act as a distance are called non-contact force. The various kinds of non-contact force are magnetic force, electrostatic force and gravitational force, which are discussed below. Okay, if we bring a magnetic force, so first of all we shall start with magnetic force. If you bring a magnet close to some iron pins, we observe that the pins get attracted towards the magnet and stick to its surface. This attraction is due to the force exerted by the magnet on the iron pins. When we'll bring some iron pins near the magnet, all the iron pins stick with the magnet. So this is due to the magnetic force in the magnet. This force exerted by a magnet is called magnetic force. A magnet can exert force on another magnet and on metals like iron, nickel, cobalt, etc. The interaction between two magnets can either be attractive or repulsive. A magnet has two poles, north pole and south pole. At the end, like poles of magnet always repel each other and the unlike poles always attract each other. In the magnet, like poles always attract each other and like pole of a magnet always repel each other and unlike pole always attract each other. So this is all about magnetic force. The force by which a magnet attracts some metals like iron, nickel, cobalt, that is magnetic force. Same poles repel each other and different poles attract each other. Okay. Gravitational force. Gravitational force, when we throw a ball from a height, it falls towards the ground. Similarly, when we throw a ball up in the air, it goes to some height and then falls back towards the ground. Why does this happen? It happens because the earth attracts all bodies towards its center. The attractive pull of the earth is an example of gravitational force or gravity. In fact, all the bodies that possess mass exert the force. Hence, the gravitational force can be defined as the force with which any two masses or object pull each other. It is due to the gravitational force or gravity. Simply we can say, when we throw a ball from a height, it falls towards the ground. Similarly, when we throw a ball up in the air, it goes to some height and then towards the ground. It goes some height, then falls back towards the ground. So this is all about gravitational force. Means a force by which a body attracts, a force by which earth attracts the body towards its center, that is gravitational force. Electrostatic force, the force exerted by a charged body on another charged or uncharged body, is known as a electrostatic force. Charge can also attract or repel each other just like magnets. When we rub a comb on a dry hair, electric charge develops on the surface. This is the simple comb. Okay. When we rub a comb on a dry hair, electric charge develops on the surface. Next, when we bring this comb near the tiny pieces of paper, they get attracted towards it. This attraction is due to the electrostatic force exerted by the charged comb on the pieces of paper. Even though the two of them are not in direct contact with each other. These two bodies are not in direct contact, but comb will attract these tiny pieces of paper. So we can say electrostatic force is an also example of non-contact force.